Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Welcome back. I hope your weekend was absolutely outstanding and you have returned roaring and ready to go. We got a bunch of business to attend to today, and we're going to get started by going through what's happening in Portland. President Trump just deployed the National Guard out there, and we've already got a lawsuit coming back from the Portland individuals, the Attorney General, and the city of Portland and elsewhere. So we'll go through all of that. We'll see what the latest is. Reaction, Rand Paul's coming out saying this is pretty much appropriate. Leave us alone. We cannot allow lawless Antifa commies to take over American cities. Then we'll turn our attention to some Comey news because Comey has now lawyered up. He's got an attorney, a former U.S. attorney who has been around a long time, has now come on to the scene and will be representing him. A couple of other documents dropped, nothing major that we'll go through. And then we see John Brennan is out and about and nervous. We had a bunch of other stuff that happened today. We saw Netanyahu join the White House. We talked a little bit about that this morning on the members only stream. And we also saw that we have this shutdown battle that is brewing. And so I've got this clip before we jump into anything. Benjamin left the White House. While Trump was with him, JD was apparently meeting with some of the Democrats, and they came out just moments ago, and they said this as it relates to the shutdown. As we know, the deadline is tomorrow, and so the clock is ticking. Here's what JD had to say, joined by the Speaker of the House and joined by John Thune outside the White House.
We just had a very frank conversation with the Senate and House Democratic leadership. Look, the principle at stake here is very simple. We have disagreements about tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about health care policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function. You don't say the fact that you disagree about a particular tax provision is an excuse for shutting down the people's government and all the essential services that come along with it. If you look at what Chuck Schumer has said in the past consistently, it's whatever our disagreements are, let's negotiate with them. Let's talk about them. Let's figure out a bipartisan solution, but you don't shut the government down. In other words, you don't put a gun to the American people's head and say, unless you do exactly what Senate and House Democrats want you to do, we're going to shut down your government. That's exactly what they're proposing out there. Now, we have to remember, they're very frustrated. They say that they're very frustrated about the fact that this negotiation has not taken place until today. But if you look at the original thing they did with this negotiation, it was a $1.5 trillion spending package, basically saying to the American people, we want to give massive amounts of money, hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens for their health care while Americans are struggling to pay their health care bills. That was their initial foray into this negotiation. We thought it was absurd. We told them it was absurd, and now they come in here saying that if you don't give us everything that we want, we're going to shut down the government. We think that's preposterous.
Yes, it is.
We think it's totally unacceptable, and we think the American people are going to suffer because these guys won't do the right thing. Now, I want to make one final point here.
Okay.
You will hear a lot from Senate Democrats, from House Democrats about the fact that American health care policy is broken. Well, we know that American health care policy is broken. We've been trying to fix it for the 8 months that we've been in office, but every single thing that they accuse about being broken about American health care is policy the Democrats have supported for the past decade. So if they want to talk about how to fix American health care policy, let's do it. The Speaker would love to do it. The Senate Majority Leader would love to do it. Let's work on it together, but let's do it in the context of an open government that's providing essential services to the American people. That's all that we're proposing to do, and the fact that they refuse to do that shows how unreasonable their position is. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see.
We'll see. It's the Democrats, so we're not holding our breath on that. But JD Vance was explaining their position on this. And of course, we've talked about this. The Democrats want to spend a bunch of money for illegal aliens and their health care and a bunch of other things. Trump said trans for everyone, whether you want it or not. You just have a side of hormones that come with your to-go meals. All of it is hopefully going to come to a resolution. But if not, the president has already cordoned off a big portion of funds for his priorities in the one big, beautiful bill, baby. And so we'll keep our eye on that. But that was JD coming out, delivering a little bit of a burner there, huh? Even Mike Johnson was like, "That's awesome, JD. You did a great job up there." And, you know, I have, with all due respect, because I would be like probably right at the same level with him. But yeah, it's interesting little organization they came, like, get him a booster seat or something, can you? All right, so that's happening out there outside the White House. And if anything changes, I've got my eyes on it. And so we'll come back and we'll say, yeah, the government's going to stay open. So we'll go through whatever pops out. But we've got some other business to attend to today. Portland under attack and the Secretary of War now called to action. President Trump saying this and being shared by the Secretary of War, called Pete Hegseth. You know who he is. He said the following, courtesy of the president. At the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also authorizing full force, if necessary. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And of course, we have seen some clips of what's going on out there in Portland. Here's Fox News that came out this morning with this clip, sharing an arrest that took place in Portland, Oregon on Sunday night. Hey, watch it. Hey. Watch your mouth. This is a live stream.
Now it looks like the police officers are pulling back.
Uh-oh.
So we'll let this play out here.
Uh-oh, police. They're coming. Get out of there. There's a frog.
Yes.
Potty mouth Antifa commies.
Yeah, the protesters out here have filled the streets again.
Look at these freak shows. What are they doing out there? So we think these are just communists in disguise. Obviously, this guy looks like is he trying to be Pepe the Frog or something? All right, that's our meme. So anyways, here's another dude. Feels kind of like an insurrection. And I don't know exactly where they were going. Maybe the police wanted to go that direction. And if they wanted to go that direction, this crowd is obstructing their movement of arrestees, and maybe they should all be indicted immediately. So, and round it up, just like they did to the J6ers. Facial scan all of them and go and arrest them for obstruction of the law. So we've got that. Now that's just one clip. Here was another one. Katie Davis Court. If you're not following Katie Davis Court, you should be, because she is doing great work over there. She is on the streets in the middle of it all, and she shared this one. Oh, that's an older one. Here, let me click something newer from her, because that was an older clip back from July. Here's another one from Portland, Oregon, 15 hours ago. They say Antifa effed with my security guard again and quickly found out. Here, let's check this one out. They're spraying stuff. Oh, that's the law enforcement. Okay. Pepper spraying. Don't attack them. What is going on out there in Portland? All right, so we're looking forward to some law and order being disseminated. Here's more from Fox and Friends. They said 2 guns were taken from the rioters who were against the fence at the ICE facility, and the investigation into some sort of an explosive device as well. Fox shared this one this morning.
ICE processing center in Broadview, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. 11 violent rioters were arrested outside of the detention center. 2 guns were taken from the rioters who were against the fence at the ICE facility. Yep. And the investigation into some sort of an explosive device found near the ICE Chicago detention facility. And this is the same place last week. 16 were arrested at the facility.
So there's 2 elements to the story. Obviously, the legal aspect. If y'all remember, during the height of the crisis, I went in on the ground, and they were taking over the schools, taking over the health centers that they had shut down in the city, and the rival gangs were warring with each other with the legal gangs that were in the town. You also have a major crime problem, guns within Chicago, illegally in Chicago as well. So I just don't understand why the mayor, I know the residents want more help. You need a presence of law enforcement there, not just for the illegals that are criminal migrants within the country, but the actual criminals that are out there on the day-to-day basis.
All right, so some good footage there from Fox News and some conversation about what is happening. But it's Chicago, it's Portland, it's everywhere. There's lawlessness on the streets. These are individuals out fighting whatever they're calling fascism by I guess, shooting and killing people at ICE facilities and in the neck at college campus events. But here is more. The Portland and Oregon individuals, lawyers for the state, are now suing. And they're saying, what do you think you are? You want to stop this violence happening on our streets? You want to allow federal government officials to do their jobs and deport illegal aliens, many of whom are criminal illegal aliens? They sued, and they submitted a 41-pager, and this is coming out of the District of Oregon in Portland. And so let's take a look at what's happening here. Then we'll get some reaction from Rand Paul and some others about the lawfulness of what is happening. But here's what they're alleging in their lawsuit against the president. They say the traditional and strong resistance of Americans to any military intrusion into civilian affairs has deep roots in our history. Yeah. Okay. 1972 case from the Supreme Court. Now, our nation's founders recognized that military rule, all right, so you can see this is going to be dramatic here, particularly by a remote authority indifferent to local needs, was incompatible with liberty and democracy. Yeah, so are 20 million illegal aliens invading our country. Foundational principles of American law, therefore, limit the president's authority to involve the military in domestic affairs. Those principles come from the Constitution. We don't need a lecture from these people about it. Defendants have trampled on these principles. They federalize members of the National Guard. That's what they're mad about. To participate in civilian law enforcement. On September 28th, Secretary of War, they're not even honoring his pronouns. He calls himself the Secretary of War, okay? These people are so xenophobic and bigoted. He identifies as the Secretary of War. What's so complicated about this for them, okay? Issued a memo calling into federal service 200 members of the Oregon National Guard to stop the lawlessness that we just saw. This order effectuated was by a social media post by President Trump that we just read, citing nothing more than a baseless, wildly hyperbolic pretext. The president says that Portland is a war-ravaged city under siege from domestic terrorists called Antifa. Defendants have thus infringed on Oregon's sovereign power to manage its own city. This is not promoting public safety. Trump has been provocative, and this is arbitrary, and it's undermining public safety. So the facts cannot justify this overreach, they write. While Trump's actions appear focused on the ongoing protest at an ICE facility, which is a federal facility that they can protect, those protests have been small. Okay, so they're not big enough? Well, that's your judgment. Typically involving less than 30 people, and the protesters' activities have not necessitated any arrests since mid-June. We just saw one a minute ago. But defendants' heavy-handed deployment of troops threatens to escalate tensions and stokes new unrest, meaning that more of our resources, the state's resources, will have to be spent responding to Trump. So they say Trump's deployment of troops is patently unlawful because their stated basis for the federalization is patently pretextual and baseless. They cannot satisfy the three requirements necessary to invoke the Guard. They also violate the 10th Amendment, and so they should be enjoined. We saw a very similar battle with Gavin Newsom, and then, of course, by the time we got some litigation on that, Trump had basically said, we solved the problem, and now we're leaving. So here they say is the people are the people suing. State of Oregon, their attorney general, City of Portland, municipal corporation, they're all suing. And they're suing Trump and Hegseth. Look at this. Again, mispronouncing him. It's not defense, it's war, you bigots. The U.S. Department of Defense is a department of the executive branch, we know. Kristi Noem runs Homeland. And here's the background. They say the U.S. Constitution authorizes Congress to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws. Today, the National Guard is a state-based military reserve force that consists of two overlapping but distinct organizations. They may serve in a number of capacities, and they list those out for us. Now, Congress has granted the president, right? So Congress delegates this stuff to the president as they do. And they say under 10 U.S. Code 12406, that whenever the United States or any of the Commonwealths is invaded or in danger of invasion, you can go, or there is a rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, sounds pretty good. And also, the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, then the president may bring in the National Guard to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those orders. And so they say, well, sounds pretty good. Yeah, right. There is a rebellion right there. They're saying F ICE and attacking federal facilities and interfering with the operation of the law, shooting at ICE agents and hitting detainees and killing conservative activists. Thus, the president's authority writing Antifa type of statements on their bullets while they're doing so. Thus, the president's authority is very limited, right? So legally, they're just going to say, this doesn't meet the statute. This doesn't meet a standard rebellion. This isn't an invasion. They're not setting up their autonomous zones. And Trump is violating posse comitatus, saying that under the law, it prohibits anyone from deploying the military for civilian law enforcement. He's not doing that. Notably, this does not confer an exception, the law, to posse comitatus. And Trump's response, of course, is we're not doing civilian law enforcement. We're protecting federal facilities. The legal and normative constraints, they write, have now been abused. And we can't move the National Guard. And they're quoting Trump. But they say he has repeatedly expressed his intentions to use the military for routine domestic law enforcement. He can say that he would have, because they go back through all of Trump's quotes. Look, Trump said, we'll deploy the military. We'll deploy the military. And they have used the military for civilian law enforcement in LA and DC. Now, DC is a separate entity because it's a federal district, but this is not. Trump federalized the California National Guard and began aggressive immigration enforcement. California sued, we remember. On August 11th, the Trump then turned back to Washington, D.C. At a press conference, Trump announced that he had planned a deployment to D.C., the National Guard. Remember? Liberation Day in D.C. Same day, Hegseth also announced national troops would happen in D.C. Fast forwarding, we're back to Portland. On June 2nd, for the first time, federal authorities arrested an asylum seeker at an immigration court in Portland. And this arrest catalyzed small public protest at an ICE facility. They say small because they don't want you to take their illegal aliens out. He's an asylum seeker, AKA an illegal alien. So he's there he's there for, what's he going to immigration court for? We don't know exactly, but maybe they discovered something that's problematic and they don't want him in the country anymore. So on June 6th, protests began in LA. Again, they love their illegals. In the following days, small protests continued outside of Portland. At one point, protesters blocked an ICE driveway, illegal, with a makeshift barricade, obstructions. And that feels like a conspiracy to me of seditionist traitors. Police bureau officers cleared the barricade within minutes, where somebody could have been killed, citing safety concerns. Then the protest continued, officers taking appropriate action. They arrested a few people who engaged in criminal activity. Great. So then on June 15th, the Portland mayor, reacting to troop deployments in LA, said, we don't want the National Guard coming here, said Mayor Keith. Subsequent events proved the mayor correct. The small protest at the ICE facility became less energetic and required less ICE law enforcement. The last arrest by the police was June 19th. That's kind of the problem, guys, is you're not conducting the law enforcement that the federal officers need you to do. So that's why they're coming in to protect the federal facilities. In the days since, Portland police has monitored the near nightly protests, none of which police intervention was required. Then in July, Tom Homan, shout out, the border bazaar. He said, we're going to release more immigration enforcement officers, tripling down in Portland. Then on July 19th, protests continued with up to 60 people at an ICE facility. That's a lot. And this has been sustained, right? Night after night, month after month. They said it's low energy and they were just seated quietly. All right. Sporadic protests continued over the subsequent weeks. On September 1st, over 100 protesters marched to the buildings. In response, they deployed chemical gas and pepper balls at the crowd. Sounds like they were very nervous that they were about to be insurrected. Maybe they should go raid all of their homes at 2 a.m. Portland Police Bureau is a sophisticated law enforcement agency, and every officer, it's just amazing, says that their precinct covers downtown Portland. They have 80 full-time officers who are there. We monitor social media. We know how to govern our streets, and therefore we don't need the National Guard. Now, aside from the incidents described above, they write, Trump decided to focus on us. On September 5th, during a Fox News report on Portland, they included misleading clips from Portland back in 2020. Shortly thereafter, Trump appeared to reference the same misleading Fox. So Trump's watching Fox. He's like, oh, that's happening right now? They're like, no, that was back from the George Floyd era when they were torching the city back then because they wanted Trump to lose back then. President Trump later designated Antifa a terrorist organization. Afterwards, he described a plan to insert federal personnel into various cities. He said, have you seen Portland at all? You take a look what's happening in Portland. Trump said, this has been going on for years. It's true. Since the summer of love, remember? It's just people out of control. It's crazy. We're going to stop that very soon. While answering questions from the press on September 25th, just days ago, Trump baselessly insisted that people had just burned the place down. He said, Portland is on my list of things to do as we clean up the cities, and we're going to Portland. Then on September 27th, Trump followed through on his threats to what? Stop the madness, posting a message on Truth Social that we read. I'm directing the Secretary of War to provide all necessary troops to Portland. What a nice truth that was. Later that day, Major General Reiger requested that the Oregon governor authorize the National Guard in a non-federalized status based on a request from Homeland. The memo threatened to direct mobilization under U.S. code if this governor did not agree within 12 hours to activate the National Guard. So I can go through you. Remember, Gouveia sued over this? Said you have to go through me or by me, or like in other words, Gavin needs to approve it, was his argument. Trump said, no, I'm going to do it. It can come through your office, or I'm going to just nationalize them, obviously, because that's the whole purpose of what's happening. The local law, the local governors, the local county, whatever officials can't handle it. So the feds have to step in. Now, DHS spokeswoman called Ohio Tricia, she said President Trump and Secretary Noem are taking action to restore law and order following weeks of violent riots at ICE facilities, assaults on law enforcement, and the terrorist attack at our ICE facility in Dallas. Now, we don't know, they write, how that was related to Portland, but in a press conference the same day, the governor of Oregon stated, Oregon, we don't want your troops here. We're going to handle it ourselves. Our public safety will be dealt with by local law enforcement. Nonetheless, on September 28th, yesterday, Secretary of Defense, it's war, you jerks, issued a memorandum calling 200 members of the National Guard into federal service for a period of 60 days. So how you like that, Governor? That order was styled as further implementation of another memo, which also vaguely cited, they say, numerous incidents of violence and disorder, and violence and disorder against federal property and federal law is a form of rebellion. Can't do that. Now, the federal government, they say, also holds key powers and responsibilities over immigration. Components within Homeland enforce those laws, and they're now doing that. Among them, Customs and Border Patrol is responsible for determining the admissibility of non-citizens, and they give us some background on ICE, saying states and municipalities don't have responsibility for immigration stuff. And under the 10th Amendment, powers not delegated to the feds are reserved to the states, aka the people. Now, in consideration of this responsibility, Oregon passed a sanctuary promise in 1987. Yeah, this is part of the problem. The first law of its kind, which prohibits state and local government agencies from using their resources to assist with federal immigration enforcement. They say, it's not our problem. It's your problem. Oregon's sanctuary promise has been updated many times, and it needs to be reversed. And if they're not going to do it, then we'll just enforce the law from the federal level. What a beautiful system and duality. The president has repeatedly attacked sanctuary cities. In 2020, he said they're all run by liberal Democrats like Joe Biden. That's true. While running for his current term, Trump continued to demonize cities where Democrats had been elected as leaders who are hollowing out their own cities in a suicidal tendency. On August 20th, he said, the crime is so out of control in our country. I mean, you have cities, Trump said. I will say this. The top 25, almost all are run by Democrats, and they have very similar policies. But you can't walk across the street to get a loaf of bread. You get shot, you get mugged, you get AR'd, you get whatever it may be. And you've seen it. I've seen it. It's time for a change, says Trump. We have to bring back our cities. So then on Inauguration Day, Trump came in, boom, issued Executive Order 14159, protecting the American people against invasion, because we just got invaded for 4 years and much before that, which once again sought to defund the sanctuary jurisdictions that are literally housing criminal illegal aliens and non-criminal illegal aliens who are in violation of U.S. law, aka criminals, and directed the U.S. Department of Justice to target jurisdictions like ours. They say the Attorney General, Pam, and Christie shall go after the sanctuary jurisdictions. If they're interfering with the lawful exercise of federal law enforcement, then they don't get any federal funds. Cut them off. Further, the Attorney General and Homeland shall evaluate and undertake other actions. So then they were unhappy. Trump signed another executive order saying we're going to end the subsidization of open borders, and another coalition of affected entities all sued. Trump again said, how dare you, sanctuary cities? You're protecting the criminals. They are. Here's more. No more sanctuary cities from the president back in April. He writes, no more sanctuary cities. They protect the criminals, not the victims. They are disgracing our country and are being mocked all over the world. Working on papers to withhold all federal funding for any city or state that allows these death traps to exist. Stephen Miller, on behalf of the Trump administration, what's up, Stephen? Leveled the accusation. He said sanctuary cities shield criminal, they write undocumented immigrants, criminals, from removal. He opined that these cities are engaged in systemic criminal violations. It's true. And that they are engaged in a scheme to nullify and obstruct the duly enacted laws of the United States of America. That's exactly right. And they are trying to change the fabric of society, essentially, in America, and have more congressional seats apportioned to them, more federal dollars apportioned to them, so that they can act as a little incubator of illegals to change the entire structure of the country. On April 28th, Trump signed another executive order. In it, he targeted sanctuary jurisdictions as well as the officials who try to use their authority to violate federal law. The order accused its targets of undertaking a lawless insurrection against the supremacy of the federal government. It's true, man. They're openly waving foreign flags on the streets as they're torching cars. What is that? That's an invasion. That's a rebellion. I don't know what else to call that. That's the definition of it. That waving foreign flags as you're torching property in our country, like you're in the middle of a conquest, and you've got the president of Mexico, threatening us, and you've got the president of the Senate down there doing the same. The same executive order also expressed the administration's intention to defund these programs. If you're a sanctuary and you're working to obstruct the federal government, why should they cooperate with you? In furtherance of Trump's efforts to coerce sanctuary jurisdictions with defunding threats, he's also asserted sweeping authority to use state law enforcement officers as well. And we're going to condition billions of dollars in money to you. Now, beginning March 2025, Homeland, Christie, and its sub-agencies, including FEMA, they also said, we're not going to give you FEMA money for funding these things. Why would we give you money if it's going to go to your illegal aliens? That money is for American citizens, okay? Forced to choose between foregoing federal funds or facing compulsory diversion. Oh yeah, it's going to cost you so much to just share your data and to stand back and stand by as the federal agents come in and do their jobs. And by the way, if many of these sanctuary cities were not sanctuary cities, I think you'd see the increased self-deportation of people who shouldn't be here. In the midst of these immigration-related federal defunding actions, Homeland published a list of 500 sanctuary jurisdictions around the country who care more about illegal aliens than they do about their own citizens. It's many citizens, too. It's like they are so deluded. They don't even understand that their policies are going to hurt their children if they have any, if they're not aborted. It accused them of shamefully obstructing the Trump administration's deportation plans and shielding dangerous criminal aliens. We have that, right? We have judges in Wisconsin who are showing illegals full privilege to use their back door whenever they want in the middle of court proceedings after beating victims who were in the courtroom just trying to get a little bit of justice. Called Backdoor Judge Dugan. The Trump administration later revised that list. They shortened it back down to 35. A little overbroad, but they're unhappy. 500 to 35. Well, that's good. You want to focus on the big ones. So those were jurisdictions where cities, states, and counties that have laws, ordinances, and regulations and other formalized practices that obstruct or limit local law enforcement cooperation. So they say that list had us on it, and they're targeting us. These efforts are now coercing sovereign states. Do you think you're sovereign over the federal government, that you can't comply with immigration law? You can create your own passports and stuff. And now they want us to disavow our own laws. It's called the Supremacy Clause. It's in the Constitution, idiots. The August 5th publication specifically bragged about the success of a threatening letter that coerced Louisville, Kentucky. They wised up. They reversed their sanctuary policies. And there's a strong interest for these sanctuary policies because you get a bunch of people there. Illegals have children under the perverted birthright citizenship provisions that we have it being interpreted erroneously right now. They become citizens. And federal apportionment brings more money and more resources because you got to help the migrants who are just here seeking a better life. So they need billions of dollars and millions to come in to help all these businesses that help flood our country. Now, on August 13th, not long ago, Bondi sent letters to officials in 32 of 35 jurisdictions, including to Oregon, Tina, the governor, her name's Tina, Governor Tina, and Portland Mayor Keith, Tina and Keith. The letters contend, they say, all right, listen, from Pam Bondi to Tina, sanctuary jurisdiction policies have undermined the cooperation and obstructed federal immigration enforcement. You're giving aliens cover to perpetrate crimes in our communities and evade the immigration consequences that federal law requires. And it's not even, when I say sharing data, that probably sounds very scary, but it's pretty simple. If an illegal alien is arrested for a local crime, let's say an illegal has a DUI, an illegal has a domestic violence, whatever, and there's a lot of those, then the person who is conducting the arrest, the agency, sheriff's office, whatever, city police, you pick one, they would detain this person locally and they would say, oh, you're not a lawful citizen. You're not a citizen here. You're an illegal alien. Oh, so we can't just release you because federal law enforcement officials want you. So they could hold on to you for a day, give you off to the immigration department. ICE would come pick you up and process you for removal. You're a criminal alien who's been charged with a crime, and you're not supposed to be in the country. And so both things can happen simultaneously. You can now be prosecuted while you're being deported for committing the crime. And if you're innocent of the crime, then great, you're going to be exonerated of the crime, but you're still not in our country legally. So you still have to go home. You have to be deported. That's great. If you committed a major felony or something, maybe we want to hold you in custody until you're deported. But what's happening is they're not holding on to these people for ICE. They just say, actually, we'll just release you on bond and you can just go do whatever you want. Good luck in our society. And you're an illegal alien. So if you don't come back, who cares? They issue a warrant for your arrest. No one cares. You keep driving around. Kilmar did not have a valid license and he was driving all over Tennessee, trafficking humans. FBI's like, yeah, let him go. Tennessee out there doing enforcement for these offenses. Yeah, let him go. Anyone else gets their car impounded. You get arrested for that. In many cases, well, for human trafficking, obviously, but driving on a suspended license, they'll leave you on the side of the road, if not arrest you. Your car's got to get impounded. Somebody's going to come pick you up or take the car. In Arizona, it's a class 1 misdemeanor. Okay. It's like a DUI. It's not a joke. But if you're an illegal alien without a driver's license, many of these sanctuary cities, you just let them go. FBI will do it for you. So once they're released, they're gone with the wind. Now, some of them will come back and others will not. That's the point. You want to hold them so that ICE can come in and deal with it. Now, they say it's too much work for us to do that, costs too much money or whatever. Okay, so they just let them go, and around we go as the cycle perpetuates itself. So that's all you're asking for. Just hang on to them for 2 seconds. But they won't do that. in fact, judges will scoot them out their back door. Bondi's August 13th letter further states that to ensure full cooperation in federal efforts, the president has directed me to identify sanctuary jurisdictions and do something about it. Then in August, Governor Tina responded. She said, we don't engage in conduct that thwarts you, except not holding people in custody. Requests from federal agencies to law enforcement about immigration enforcement without a judicial order must be documented, must be reported, and it must be denied. Okay, so she's explaining literally the example I just gave. They are saying if you send in a request from ICE, we're not going to hold anybody unless you get a judicial order. We're going to let them go because that's the law. Oregon complies with federal law, and we're going to follow our own laws. So if you want them, we're not going to give you the courtesy of hanging on to them. Now, that same day, Trump used the pretext of crime to threaten a plan to expand this. And this is going to hurt us, they say. This unlawful federalization and deployment infringes on our sovereign interest in managing law enforcement within its own borders and facilitating an invasion of the United States of America as a federal entity. And we have the Supremacy Clause. And we're big fans of state power here, but not when we have states incubating to undermine the entire country. That's not what this is for. The power is reserved for the states to what? Violate the Constitution? To enable criminal aliens to come into your country and not be removed? Not even paying common courtesy to the federal government to just hang on to them? So if you want to get aggressive with it, then that's fine. We can be aggressive too. We'll come back in as the federal government, withdraw your funds, and deploy federal agents there to conduct this enforcement. It also infringes on our authority under the Constitution, and I'm sure this is going to an Oregon judge, so I'm sure the judge will be like, yeah, this is fascism. Trump's use of the National Guard is a usurpation of our lives, and Trump's conduct is also going to interfere with current planned activities, which is probably to hire lawyers for illegal aliens. And this is going to increase civil unrest. Okay, if you bring in, like the illegals are going to hate it. If you bring in federal agents to go after the illegal aliens, they're going to get so mad, they're going to wreck the whole friggin' place, okay? Recent deployment of troops has provoked protests. By who? Who's doing the protesting? Who's doing the burning and the obstructing? Those military incursions are increasing the unrest, and they're going to escalate everything. Well, that's actually good, you know. If you're going to draw out the illegal alien criminals who will burn cars and stand on the rooftops with their Mexican flags, then we want to know who they are. We're happy that they come out of the woodwork. So there's more. It's going to harm Oregon. It's going to suppress business activity. Yeah. Says once the troops come in, foot traffic drops, and there's going to be economic harm as well. Our resources are limited. There's also going to be more wildfires. If Trump sends the National Guard in, then the whole city's going to burn down. And so they write the following. Trump doesn't have the power to do this. This is not an actual rebellion or danger of rebellion. This is not war ravaged. There's no single instance where the laws couldn't be executed. And so they say, we're in total control of this. Trump's discretion has not met the standard. Count three, violation of the 10th Amendment, right? It's infringing on Oregon's police power, unlawful coercion, and more. So we're just fast forwarding through it. APA, always got to shove that one in there. Everything else fails. Put the APA in there. Administrative Procedures Act, got it. Separation of powers, yep. And the take care clauses. Actually, that's exactly what he's doing, is exercising that clause right now. Many people have just allowed these sanctuary cities to fester because it's been complicated for them. Republicans want the cheap labor. Democrats want the cheap votes. Nobody wants to have a hard conversation about what's happening to the fabric of America. And now the president is enforcing the law. So we're getting these wine fests coming out from people like Scott Kennedy over from the Attorney General's office for the state of Oregon. And a whole bunch of people signing off on that. So they're asking for an injunction. They say, stop Trump, stop. Hegseth from the Secretary of Defense, they call it bigots, it's war, from calling the National Guard members into service or from doing anything else at all. And so let's check the docket to see if there's anything fresh on it. But they, I think, may have scheduled a hearing for this afternoon. So we want to get the latest on this. If I can appropriately copy and paste this link, then it'll work like this. Here is the latest from the docket. The complaint got filed. We got declarations all coming in here saying that our city's amazing. Look at all these declarations. And here's somebody writing the following. I declare, I'm the Attorney General. Our job here is amazing. All these declarations are true. We can handle our business in Portland and in Oregon. So there's a scheduling order. All right. So a telephonic conference today in 20 minutes. How about that? The court will provide the parties with a call-in number ordered by Judge Michael H. Simone. So that's coming out soon. I'm sure the judge will grant a temporary restraining order and do something quickly. He said it very quickly. And so we'll see what happens. But that is the latest there. We also see more. Here is more from Katie Davis Court. She posted this at 8 o'clock last night about what was happening. Another arrest happening. Did somebody just throw that? I don't know if it was a throw. That might have been an assault with a helmet. Pushing the cops back. Look at that. Hey, watch your mouth. This is a live stream. We got kids out there in the audience. Watch it. Okay, obviously you can see. Look at that. Look at them. Very unhappy. These are Antifa communists who are assembling on behalf of illegal aliens. They don't want them released. They think that they're fighting against fascism. All they're doing is trying to subvert law and order across America, create a stateless, classless society for their little communist hellhole utopia. And at least they're staying behind the lines, but that's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And we're not going to hear the media screeching about insurrection or anything like that when it's their side engaging in this actually obstructive behavior. Now, there was more. We saw Rand Paul came out, and here is what he said about all this.
Are you comfortable with pushing the limits here of some of these uses of either potentially troops or federal agents?
I think both the people in Portland and across America have to decide about this. You know, we had anarchy in Portland for like 6 months or a year. The city didn't even control large swaths of the city. These had federal buildings on them. And so I think there is a role for the federal government. Am I excited about it? No, I'd prefer not to have troops in our cities, or I'd prefer them only to come, you know, with the acceptance of the local authorities. But I do think there is a role if the states will not step up. Portland did not step up, and they let their city go, you know, they let it burn, for goodness sakes. And then they let a whole area become the city, you know, these blocks of anarchy where some sort of local thug rule was going on. So I don't know. I think ultimately what's going to happen, and I think some of this is the president showing the politics of Republicans versus Democrats, is eventually cities like Chicago and Portland are going to give up on Democrats because their people are dying. It's their people in their community, the people who have been supporting the Democrat Party for decade after decade. They are the ones dying. It's not the people in the rich neighborhoods that are the country club Republican. It's the poor people in every city is dying. And, you know, the cities have to step up on this.
Well,
yeah, it's an interesting thing. The communist mind virus, it will, for some people, the difficulties that they face help to fuel the expansion of the ideology, because the communist comes into the fellow prospective communist and says, this is the capitalist fault. This is the fascist fault. everything that is happening that's bad is because of them. It's not because of our side that invaded our country with 20 million people, that inflated our dollars back during COVID to the tune of Lord knows what. And the list goes on and on. So it is kind of, politics of grievance, of victimization. We're perpetual victims. And so the lawlessness, right, in this suicidal, really, ideology that is happening might cause more people to say, we have to help you increase the lawlessness because you are the only people who are offering us a real solution to our victim ideology. And it perpetuates itself in this disgusting, endless cycle. So it needs to stop. Obviously, sanctuary cities invading our country, facilitating the invasion is not state sovereignty at all. And so the federal government, even according to Rand Paul, many would say no love of federal power, saying we got to get a handle on this, and Portland is a good place to start. So we'll keep our eye on it. We'll see what the judge says and be back with more. Now, let's turn our attention to James Comey. And here's what we've got with this dude. James Comey has lawyered up. You can see this guy entered his appearance called Patrick Joseph Fitzgerald. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. We've got a docket update. This is the dude right here. He's a former U.S. attorney. We'll hit the highlights on it, of course, but we also have some reaction on this development that Comey is now indicted. We have John Brennan, who also sounds pretty dang nervous out there. And so we'll see where this pattern of indictments goes, but we can expect more to come. That's according to J.D. Vance and others. But this is the latest on the docket from James Comey. Let's do a refresh so it's fresh out of the oven. We remember last week, Comey got indicted. We know that the grand jury was not unanimous. And boom, immediately thereafter, we got Patrick Fitzgerald. He's coming in and he's asking to be admitted pro hoc vice, meaning he's not a regular bar licensed attorney in this court, but he's got this woman, local attorney called Jessica Carmichael, who is signing for him. I vouch for this dude so he can be your lawyer. We've got a couple documents. The criminal cover sheet, of course, his arraignment is going to be coming up on 10/9 at 10 a.m. And there's a big question about this. Why is James Comey getting a self-surrender arraignment date of 10/9/2025 when our friend Roger Stone had an arrest date at 6 a.m. in the morning outside of his house? He asks the very pertinent question. James Comey and I were charged with the exact same crimes. Exactly. Why did 29 heavily armed FBI agents storm my home at 6 a.m. in the morning to arrest me after tipping off CNN, while James Comey still has not voluntarily surrendered for his arrest and has until October 9th to do so? Well, we know why. Because James Comey and the FBI were highly weaponized, and the Trump DOJ is being markedly reserved for whatever reason. But that happened, so that's coming up in October. He got the summons. We'll go through that and take a look at who this attorney is. So here's the application for admission pro hoc vice. This is a foreign attorney who wants to come in and represent, there he is, James Comey, criminal former FBI director. This attorney, solo practitioner, not with a law firm as it stands right now, and he's been with some big law firms, but solo right now. He's got a Gmail address. There's his P.O. box. He's been around a bunch of other districts: Southern District of New York, Eastern District of New York, Northern District of Illinois, Southern District of Illinois, Western District of Michigan, Eastern District of Wisconsin, and the Northern District of Indiana. But not, apparently, the Eastern District of Virginia, which is where James Comey is because he was testifying remotely back during COVID from this location. He says, all right, I know I'm not a licensed attorney here. Full admission can come later. He confirms, I've not been reprimanded. Nobody is saying there's any problems with my character or fitness. I've read the rules, and I certify that within 90 days that I will have read the rules and be familiar with the local court things and all that stuff. So he says, this is my signature coming in. The person vouching for him right here, Jessica Carmichael, all of that comes in. All right, so who is this dude? Patrick Fitzgerald, the current attorney representing James Comey, is this fella. Former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. And former partner and an American attorney. He was, for a decade, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, served as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, that's Maureen Comey land, and Chief of the Organized Crime Terrorism Unit. From 1995, he prosecuted Osama bin Laden, golly, Omar Abdel-Rahman, and Ramzi Youssef. He was also special counsel for the Justice Department, was former prosecutor in charge of the Valerie Plame affair with Dick Cheney. As a federal prosecutor, also led a number of high-profile investigations, including Rod Blagojevich, remember him? Which he says is a total scam. So he prosecuted him. And George Ryan, Conrad Black, Richard Daley, and others. Born Roman Catholic, father also named Patrick, attended Our Lady of Help Christian School, then went to Harvard. So he married Jennifer. They have 2 children. After practicing law, became a U.S. attorney and more. He was appointed, was there for a while, joined private practice. Then in 2023, he retired, and now he's representing James Comey. Began serving as defense counsel, defending him against 2 charges, and of course, we'll see more from him. Now, here was the criminal cover sheet for James Comey. And not much too interesting here. James Comey is not a juvenile, believe it or not, despite posting juvenile things. James Comey is his name. He's white, born 1960. U.S., not in custody. Got an attorney. So Jessica Carmichael was number 1. She's got a bar number. Prosecutor is Lindsay Halligan. What's up, Lindsay? FBI special agent is Miles L. Starr. Counts 1 and 2, we've got false statements here. And then counts 3 is obstruction for the felony. Digital signature of Lindsay Halligan hits the docket. So James Comey got a summons. Of course, we saw that. Roger Stone pointing this out. He has to appear October 9th at 10 a.m. Apparently not going to get raided by the FBI. Proof of service. I delivered copies to James Comey's lawyer. James Comey, what a nice little situation this is for James. His lawyer gets to help himself surrender. I delivered a copy of the summons to James Comey. James better show up on October 9th. Which is a nice thing. I don't know why he's not being raided and hauled in. Or, yeah, you should wait till he gets on a airplane and they can get him on the tarmac and put him in leg shackles like they did for Peter Navarro. So he got the summons. That's a copy delivered. And he is due back in court in October. Now, some reaction to all this. Here is Lindsey Graham on the Comey indictment.
Here's the question for the system. On August the 3rd of 2016, just over a month after opening Crossfire Hurricane, there was a meeting that we now know took place in the White House where the CIA director told Comey, President Obama, and others that there's intel that this whole storyline about Trump colluding with the Russians may have come from the Clinton campaign. That's pretty stunning information, I would suggest.
It is, Lindsey.
In September 2016, just a couple of months, a little over a month later, Comey gets an investigative lead memo from the intelligence community saying we have intelligence that the Clinton campaign has signed off on a plan to link Trump to Russia to avoid the scrutiny of the email server problem she had. Here's my question. What did the FBI do to verify that lead? Did they open up an investigation once they were told there's intelligence that Clinton may be behind this? I've written a letter to Kash Patel.
No, they didn't do that, Lindsey. They shoved it off into a classified annex and they kept it all compartmentalized so nobody knew what it was. But then they would say, well, we've got this really important information that's really top secret, super secret. Well, what is it? Well, it says that there's collusion. Where'd it come from? It's classified. Okay. Where did it come from? Hillary Clinton, from her campaign. And they just hid it because they're such Criminals. See, here's more of Lindsay.
And I want to know what Comey did after being told twice that the intelligence community suspected this was Hillary Clinton's campaign, not Trump colluding with the Russians.
We already know they covered it up, they hid it, and they continue to weaponize their offices to take out their political opponent. Now, Trump gave some conversation to NBC News, and they say from the president, I think Christopher Wray's coming next. So Comey, Chris Wray, both FBI directors. Chris Wray also in on a lot of this, saying Trump in an exclusive interview with NBC News accused FBI former director of Christopher Wray of inappropriate behavior and said he would think, I don't know, but I would imagine, said the president, I would certainly imagine, I would think they are doing that. Trump said in a phone call when asked whether the Justice Department should investigate Chris Wray. Trump accused him of wrongdoing in the interview, saying Wray, who resigned at the end of the Biden administration, did a terrible job and we just found out about it. Rated Roger Stone. I think it's very inappropriate what he did. And I think a lot of his service was very inappropriate, says Trump. But we haven't gone beyond that. Don't forget, we just found out about all of these FBI agents being there. The comment about being there was in reference to the 274 agents that were there just prior to and during the J6 hoax. Last week, Blaze Media said, yeah, there were 274 plainclothes agents there. The report is, questionable in terms of, exactly what it's specifying. Like, the report is accurate, but I think you can kind of splice it in different ways because there's questions about when were they there. Were they there 2 minutes before the first breach at the West Gate, or were they there 5 minutes after that occurred? Where in the timeline exactly? We don't really know. It's all just kind of a smorgasbord of reports. But we do know that there were undercover agents there. CHS, FBI, whatever you want to label them as, from Homeland Security or wherever, they were there. Proud Boys attorneys saw it. They were precluded from bringing it in as evidence because the judge said it's not the relevant agency. Trump said that they were probably acting as agitators and insurrectionists. They were not acting as law enforcement officials. Yeah, and if they all came, let's say there's, a few dozen undercover plainclothes agents or whatever, could they have stopped it? Could they have said, hey, we're agents, stop this, back up, right? Cordoned off and prevented it from happening? Or were they there just kind of like going with the crowd? Hey, crowd's going in there. We got to monitor the crowd. And so they're actively, enabling it by being a part of it. The Post also directly called out Wray, saying he's got some major explaining to do. Wray hasn't commented about the recent allegations, probably still on vacation with his family. There is no evidence that undercover FBI agents were there, says NBC News. Okay, yeah, there's no evidence. There's no evidence at all that there were any undercover FBI officers. They stipulated to it. In the Proud Boys trial, these people are the worst liars. A report by the Justice Department Inspector General concluded the same. The FBI stipulated that they had sources. Now, again, they're so sneaky with words. Undercover FBI officers. What the hell does that even mean? Do they even call themselves officers? No, they call themselves special agents. Were there any undercover special agents there? Well, we don't know, but there are no officers there. Okay, that's how they get around this crap. There were feds all over the place. On Saturday evening, Kash Patel gave a different description of the agency's role, and he also criticized them. He said 274 agents were thrown into crowd control on January 6th against FBI standards. Yeah, before, like, you could have crowd control before the people even arrived at the gates at the Capitol building, right? Trump was given the speech. FBI could have said, oh my gosh, we got a bunch of people here, a lot more. Activate yourselves. We need all these people coming down here. You're activated. Then people march on down. Now there's feds in the crowd. Then the event ultimately happens after they're shooting people in the face with paintball guns. But he told Fox News, he said, agents were sent into the crowd, into a crowd control mission after the riot was declared by Metro Police. That's what Kash says. So that's something that goes against FBI standards. So it sounds like those 274 came after things started to get unruly. A senior FBI official with knowledge said that the blaze was completely and utterly untrue. It's the same thing that Just the News was reporting as well, too. I know of no agents who were authorized to be in the crowds observing the constitutionality, said one official. Anonymously, okay. Another FBI director, James Comey, was indicted last week. Comey's denied any wrongdoing, but hopefully Tisch and Pencilneck are also getting indictments soon. Other Trump officials in recent weeks and months have hinted at other people. J.D. Vance said certainly there will be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years in the Trump administration. And I'm hopeful that I have that one queued up. We'll see if we do. Trump also spoke about directing Hegseth to send troops to Portland. And that apparently is already underway. So some side-by-sides from the Democrats who loved when Trump was being indicted, but who hate it when one of their people's being indicted. Here is Amy Klobuchar talking about the safeguards of American justice, as long as it's President Trump. But if it's some other grand jury that indicts James Comey, suddenly this is a weaponization of society by a dictator fascist.
I don't have all the evidence. This is going to be up to the Justice Department to make a decision about what happened here. I will say in America, we know, as a great man once said, the law is king, the president isn't king. And I would add to that, the former president isn't king. Everyone has to follow the law.
As a former prosecutor.
Yeah, and so does the FBI director.
Myself, this is weaponizing the Justice Department. She assured me that politics would not play a role, that they would make independent decisions. That is not what this is. This is a vengeance prosecution.
No, it's not.
It is not about the law.
There's plenty of law. You guys went after Roger Stone. You guys raided his house. And now the same thing is happening to James Comey, except one person in this case is actually guilty, James Comey. And we're excited to see more twisting into pretzels from the Democrats. Here's another one, and this is just a great freeze frame to start this clip because he looks nervous. Here's John Brennan, one of the worst in America. And new questions about this dude and his involvement in 9/11, if you missed the Tucker Carlson 9/11 series. He says John Brennan was over there in Syria or something, approving the passports for these people to come into our country, which begs the question, what was that about? But Brennan then became CIA director and was colluding with Obama, Comey, Clapper, and the rest of them to rig an outcome of an election. They wanted to say that Trump was illegitimate, that the Russians had come in and colluded to steal the election, and they created an intelligence operation to try to create that coup. And here is now some justice being returned their direction.
You know, I don't see any case against me. I have looked back on all of my actions and decisions.
All right, case closed. So that's John Brennan. He's innocent. He analyzed himself and has discovered that he's an innocent man, and there's nothing to even look at. Thanks for your attention.
And with John Durham, the special counsel, and others that have looked at what we did, it was certainly consistent with our legal authority.
Yeah, and how much of the classified annex did John Durham have or discuss with us? How many of the FBI investigations into themselves and into the leakers never made it to these reports, at least publicly? We're learning about all of this stuff in the aftermath because Tulsi Gabbard is now releasing it. These dudes had this stuff buried so deep in their annexes that nobody could find them. And now it's all coming out.
And with the law. So I don't know what, they're referring to there. Individuals who used to work in the government, even if their security clearances were revoked, they could be subpoenaed. They could be, called to provide testimony in support of whatever allegations they have. I don't see a case there.
Okay, well, he can explain that to his cellmate as soon as he gets indicted. Here's more. James Comey's son-in-law apparently threw a hissy fit and resigned. After James Comey got indicted, Nick Sorter says his son-in-law, who prosecuted J6ers, has resigned. He's probably going to go call Maureen Comey and be like, hey, you want to get a coffee together and talk about how we lost our jobs? This trash is taking itself out indeed. Troy Edwards, Deputy Chief, National Security Section, is now gone by. He writes this to Lindsay Halligan. Hey, dear Lindsay, to uphold my oath to the Constitution and country, I hereby resign as an Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, effective immediately. Good. Sounds like he's got a pretty big conflict of interest there. Troy, he'll go get a job at some lefty firm or like dedicate his life to James Comey or something. But it's perfect. This is the type of purge that we want. They can take themselves out. Here is real Anna Paulina Luna talking about James Comey, saying he better lawyer up. He now has a lawyer. He's probably going to get more lawyers. And here's what she had to say.
I think he's going to have to lawyer up. You know, I've been encouraging the DOJ, and I think that they need to arrest someone. We know that there's been a lot of laws broken and people's civil liberties violated. You know, what he's facing is a 5-year prison sentence, and I think that he deserves every bit of that. But I think oversight especially, you know, Congress, as you know, Jason, has the ability to, if people lie to Congress, bring that inherent contempt charge if the DOJ is not going to act. And I think that that needs to be something put on the table. Now, I know specifically with his testimony that it's outside of the statute of limitation, if you will, for Congress, because we can only do it for the legislative timing every 2 years. But I do think that people need to be held accountable, and I think the American people want that as well.
That's right. Anna Paulina Luna, we do want accountability. And here is Jim Jordan. Of course, he's over on the Judiciary Committee. He was commenting about this, posted by Jim Jordan himself this morning.
Who are on the right, or are conservative, usually thinkers, are not too high on this case. Are you?
No, I mean, look,
Andy McCarthy said he doesn't think it's a good indictment. And somebody dug up a bunch of old clips from Andy McCarthy and how kind of in love he is with the Justice Department and James Comey in particular.
I think if Jim Comey, if they believe he lied to Congress and he obstructed justice, let's move forward. What I do know is the things that Jim Comey has done that I think were wrong. I think he leaked classified information.
Yes.
I think he was pushing to do that.
Yes.
I think he went and set up Michael Flynn. You know, back at the start of this amendment, remember when he talked about, he said, oh, well, we should have called the White House counsel, but we thought we could get away with it. So they go over and they set up the General Flynn. So Jim Comey's, I think, done all kinds of things wrong. And I remember when we deposed him, I mean, literally one of the most arrogant individuals I have ever been around. So, yeah, I think this is warranted. I think this is the right thing to do. And remember, this is when it all started. Back in 2016, after the election, before Inauguration Day, they changed the intelligence community assessment, Brian. Remember, this is what Tulsi Gabbard brought forward 9 weeks ago. Whistleblower came to her and said they had one intelligence community report. They changed that, and they made it sound much worse than it was to establish a predicate to start the Mueller investigation and go after President Trump. And what they...
Yeah, I think it was even more than that. If they could have raced this through, they wanted to invalidate the election. They were seeding that to say, oh, it was illegitimate. The Russians interfered with the election. They couldn't get that done in time. They couldn't squeeze it through and come and concoct something before the inauguration ultimately. And so the next backup plan was to set up Michael Flynn and to create an entire hoax that really dogged his administration for the first 2 years to stall it out. And they were pretty successful in causing a bunch of political headache. We had to go through different AGs, remember, like Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself and all this stuff because of their lawfare. And now they need to pay the price for the weaponization of the DOJ.
What they really did is once they changed that report, Comey, Clapper, and Brennan all go up to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017. They briefed the president on the new change report that wasn't supported by the real underlying intelligence. They briefed him, and then Comey leaks the fact that they briefed the president on the dossier. The dossier that they knew was false, the dossier that they knew was garbage, the dossier they knew was paid for by the Clinton campaign and authored by a foreigner. They briefed the president on that, leak it to the press, and thereby give it credibility. And then they were off and running. They had established the predicate. They'd given a reason to have the whole Mueller investigation and to undermine President Trump's first term. So Jim Comey deserves whatever the Justice Department has found to go after him. If it's obstruction or if it's lying to, 18 U.S.C. 1001 lying to Congress, I think all that is warranted. God bless the Justice Department for holding someone accountable who started it all 10 years ago.
And my sense is he won't be the last. And by the way, forget about Republican or Democrat.
Okay, we hope he's not the last because there are many other criminals who are out there. And we got the clip of J.D. Vance, who was out on with Fox and Friends over the weekend. Shout out to Officer Lou for grabbing this one for us. Fox News Sunday had J.D. Vance on, and here's what they asked him about Comey, Schiff, Tishy, Lay Tish, and more indictments coming soon.
Well, there's certainly going to be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration, but we're always going to let the law drive this stuff and the facts of the case and not political motivations, which frankly makes us so much different from the Biden administration.
Yeah, and the law and facts are on our side. Okay, the facts say that these people broke the law many times over, and they should be charged for it, and they will.
Where they indicted not just the President of the United States, but so many people who were just engaged in the basic job of politics, who were engaged in policymaking, who disagreed with the Biden administration, and because that they faced prosecution from that same administration. If you look at the Comey indictment, Martha, this was a grand jury indictment delivered in Alexandria, Virginia, not exactly a hotbed of Donald Trump's political support. There were three requested indictments. The grand jury returned 2 of those 3 indictments. So I think they showed they were judicious. I think that it showed clearly that there were a couple of things that James Comey did wrong. And to the people who are saying that this is all political, I mean, look, if you look at our track record in the Trump administration, there have been people who have been prosecuted, who have been political allies, who agree with our politics. There have been people who disagree with our politics. We're not letting politics drive this. We're letting the requirements of the justice system and the law drive this. And unfortunately for James Comey, when I look at this indictment, I see a guy who lied under oath, and he'll have his day in court. He'll have his opportunity to prove the other case in front of the jury. But the idea that this is driven by politics, I think is preposterous when you actually read the details of the indictment and the obvious fact that James Comey did lie under oath to Congress multiple times.
All right, we'll see where it goes.
We will, and we're looking forward to it. Now, James Comey is just hopefully the first domino. He was in the room for a lot of these meetings. He's being charged specifically for his testimony to Congress, but a lot of other people testified to Congress, and a lot of other people deserve their day in court. And if they want to exercise their pardons or some sort of legislative immunity or executive privilege or whatever, then they can assert those claims, just like Bannon did, just like Navarro did, just like Trump had to do. And Comey, as they told us for years, is in the same boat as everybody else. No one is above the law. All right, so now, my friends, let's see what you say about all of this. Quick recap on what we got into today. Couple of segments. We had updates in Portland, and the Antifa goons now are going to be facing the Department of War because Trump has now deployed troops to protect the war-ravaged Portland. And the Portland governor and everybody, attorney general, are all suing, saying, how dare you try to get rid of our sanctuary policies? If we want to let illegal aliens just reside and percolate in here, then we're allowed to do that. Who do you think you are, the president? Well, yeah, that's exactly right. The Supremacy Clause and the executive branch, the DOJ, will respond, but the case is making its way through the District of Oregon. And so we'll see what comes next on that. We had reaction. Even Rand Paul agrees. Can't allow this lawlessness to fester. That is a disservice to the citizens of America who expect more from their government. And the fact that their local governments are betraying them does not make it unconstitutional to enforce federal law. We also then talked about James Comey. He now has a lawyer, and this is who it is. His name is Patrick Fitzgerald. It's this guy right here, former U.S. attorney, lots of background, worked for Bush, worked for Obama, was appointed, by James Comey. Oh, we missed that at the first pass. Wow, isn't that great? He was special counsel for the DOJ in office. He was appointed by James Comey. Now he's representing James Comey. Isn't it beautiful? One just big, incestuous, disgusting, happy family. We also saw, these were the 3 counts. Apparently 2 of them have stuck. And we saw what they were: false statements and obstruction. James Comey got a summons and a requirement to appear. He was not ultimately arrested by 29 heavily armed FBI agents, although maybe he should be. Maybe that can change. We also saw Trump saying that Christopher Wray is coming down next. He'll be hopefully prosecuted as well. Amy Klobuchar, very unhappy when it's her side, but if Trump is being prosecuted, thrilled. Brennan freaked out a little bit. I've done nothing wrong. I've investigated myself. I talked to my wife last night. I reviewed my journal. I sat on the toilet for several hours and I took a long shower, and I've decided I'm innocent. All right, that's great. You can tell that to your cellmate. We saw that Comey's son-in-law or somebody resigned in disgrace, throwing a hissy fit on his way out. We got Luna, we got Jordan, and we got Vance in the House, all explaining no one is above the law. And now it's time to hear from you, my friends. And it's a beautiful Monday. I hope your weekend was amazing. Thank you for joining us. Keeping our eye on the news to see if we're going to have a shutdown or what's going on, but have not seen anything come through yet. So hopefully it's being shut down. That'll be good. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll see what that looks like. But my friends, we got some great comments and donos. Thank you so much for sending these in. Thanks for being here. And, and for the comments. Hey, it's Monday. Look at this kitty. It was, a slower Monday. This morning on the members only stream, I'm like, it's going to be jamming. And then like today it's kind of quiet. Where is everybody? What's going on out there? All right, but we got a couple of good segments in. Bucky's is Rome. What's up, Bucky's? Said, I get the royal family and the whole cousins thing and why it's crazy, but kowtowing to a whole population because you don't want to offend them is next level insanity. People do realize what else is prevalent in Middle Eastern countries like Pakistan. Yeah, child brides. England has fallen. Yeah, and I saw the headline on this. Apparently England's like it's okay to marry your cousin now. Is that what they're saying? What is going on over there? I've seen other cops like ripping English flags out of people's hands. UK flags right out of people's hands. I don't know what's going on over there, man, but they need to get the Second Amendment. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what's up? Fury after woke. I almost said furry because that's something that's been, subject here. Fury after woke NHS supports first cousin marriages despite birth defects and oppression against women. Okay. It's common in British Pakistani community. Great. So they don't want to offend people, so they're going to have more children with congenital defects. Perfect. That sounds like wokeism in full display. Doan, what's up? Doan says, Democrats, the party of big government or no government at all? Well, it's pretty interesting. I think that the idea that there's not going to be a government is idiotic. And I don't really know how they think that the government can just evaporate, like Karl Marx thought and these people thought. Like eventually they'd have a socialist state and the state would just dissipate and everybody would exist in this communal fashion. It's ridiculous. But what they don't understand is that there's an iron law of oligarchy and there's always going to be a ruling class no matter what. It's just how society organizes itself. Unless you have some maybe overlord, like an AI overlord that's just a unilateral dictatorship. But all communism is basically dictatorship, and that they just want to be part of the dictatorship against everybody else. Don't, thank you for that. Severus. Rob, were you this snarky in court? Please say yes. Well, court's a different environment, so it's harder to be snarky, in court. I'd like to say yes, but you're kind of on court behavior. I can run my big fat mouth here behind this microphone and this screen because I'm not in court, not in your jurisdiction. So it can be a little bit more provocative here. I had my moments, and especially with prosecutors outside of the courtroom. Then you guys can be snarky all you want back in the office closets that they put outside the court buildings. But you try to be on your best behavior and not get held in contempt. Chubby, Oregon is only suing because they've already talked to all the local activists, judges, and have an agreement for them to violate the law and rule in their favor. Activists, that was a messy typo. No, I actually got it. I thought you were like LGBTQ activists kind of a thing. I ate expialidocious kind of a thing. So I was picking up what you're putting down, Chubby. Thank you for the double dono. We appreciate that. What's up? Jason Manjin. Jason's here. Says one of Washington's first actions was to raise the army to quash the risky rebellion, an insurrection. Nothing is new here. Yeah. Yeah. And how is a group of illegal aliens waving foreign flags not an insurrection, not a rebellion, not an invasion? And then when you have basically, illegal alien adjacent individuals whose power comes from this illegal alien community coming in to support that invasion, how is that not treason to some extent, which of course is a no-no word. Chubby says, the claim that Trump had previously used the National Guard for civilian law enforcement is patently false. That claim alone in an official court filing should result in an immediate dismissal with prejudice. Yeah, and I was waiting for them, and we've kind of fast forwarded through a lot of that, but I was waiting for them to reference that decision, that the president can't do these things, because ultimately, I believe that case we kind of stopped following because it kind of became moot after the National Guard was there. Then they kind of pulled him out. We had Judge Breyer, who issued a couple of those rulings. And I think it's going to be, this issue will continue to come up as the sanctuary cities, one after another, come under federal scrutiny. Former LEO, YouTube settles with President Trump for $24 million for blocking access. Oh my gosh. Well, they flagged us for, I think, 2 videos. So I wonder if we could get 2 million for that. I don't know. Don says, Dems' fear of district maps being redrawn in favor of Republicans using immigration enforcement is as real as the fake outrage and concern for illegals. Totally. Yeah, I think it's a 3-part plan. We talked about this morning, and I combined 2 parts because it was 4 and now it's 3. Lock down the border and deport. That's 1, not 2. Birthright citizenship needs to be properly interpreted. That's 2. And then apportionment is 3. Okay. And if you can get all those lockdowns and deports, apportionment, and birthright citizenship, that's going to solve the problem. But we got a lot of work cut out for us on all 3 of those counts. It's about power, and the illegals are just their avenue to power. Trino Galaxy says, the people of Portland, can you enforce the law? The city and state government? No? Well, how dare you make us enforce the law? From Trino Galaxy, yeah. Well, we want to let the criminals go. Well, you can't do that because they're not allowed in our country. And so they'll sue to prevent you from, doing something that's good for their citizens in their own cities. Philip Coggins. I thought the nullification issue was settled in 1865. From Philip Coggins. Are you talking about jury nullification? Yeah, I mean, jury nullification, I think, still happens. It's something that you can't talk about in trial. You can't go to the jury and say, you can nullify this whole thing if you don't believe in drug laws. That's a mistrial. And you're in trouble for that because that's not the law, right? The judge's directive to the jury is you have to follow the law, but juries may still, decide that they want to acquit somebody for whatever reason. Thank you, Philip. Chubby. This filing is so ridiculous and insanely partisan. It's clear my previous dono was correct, and they know it's going to a sympathetic judge who will appreciate all of the unnecessary tripe it is overloaded with. No real honest or serious judge would even accept this drivel. From Chubby. Thank you, Chubby, for the dono. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to go to an Oregon judge. I don't know much about the judge who ultimately got it. But didn't we have this? Let's see. Did I pull up that docket over here? I think we did. Let's check out the judge real quick. Michael Howard Simon, judge. Let's check it out. Michael H. Simon. Appointed by Obama. In there since 2011. U.S. District Judge for the District of Oregon, born New York City, Jewish American family. Harvard, married. Wow, he's married to a U.S. Democrat representative called Suzanne. Okay, we know where this is going to go. This dude's wife is a Democrat senator. Has his wife ever said anything bad about President Trump? What a joke. I'm so glad we looked this up. All right, so I think we know where this one's going to go. But, of course, we'll keep our eye on it. Thank you, Chubby, for flagging that. What's up, King of Biltong, baby? Good to see you, King of Biltong. Bringing you the best biltong you've ever had in your whole life. BiltongUSA.com is how you're going to get more protein in your diet. You're probably struggling with this. But this is high protein. B vitamins, creatine, iron, zinc. And it's a great addition to a healthy diet. Code Robert, you'll save 10% off over at BiltongUSA.com. Thank you, Biltong, for the dono. Cardinal O'Flanagan says, what the AG of Oregon says is half true. They're capable of enforcing. However, the problem is they refuse to enforce the laws. Yeah, no, they pass these laws, and then they say, we have to follow the laws. So we can't help the federal government because we have to follow the law. Like, you just passed that law so that you didn't have to follow the rules. Well, I can't, ignore the law. It's the will of the voters. All right. Schlista. Okay, well, it's against the will of the federal government and America to have sanctuary cities where we're having floods of illegals come in and take over and install their own governments. Schlista. Rob, it cracks me up when Antifa claims they aren't an organization as they don't have an HQ. It's just a belief system. And Antifa can't be fascist since their name says the opposite. Exactly right. Like, who are the people who want to censor you and shut your mouth from speaking things that are stochastic terrorism? It's them. They sound more stupid than the sovereign citizen in court, arguing they don't need a driver's license or license plate. That comes in from Schlista. Yeah, the sovereign citizens usually don't have a good time in courts. Cops just say, okay, that's interesting. Sheila Poo. Oh, you don't have a license plate? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, here's a ticket. Sheila Poo. JX is coming in. New membos. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing in 10 new membo friends. We got Mr. T is here. Bolt Carriers. What's up, Tyler Graff? Michael Mathis. American Virus is Freedom in the house. Tina Marie. What's up, Jill Kraft? Lepers joining us. Marshall also coming in, courtesy of Sheila Poo. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing them in. Did you notice the Portland judge is the nephew of Neil Simon? Who is Neil Simon? Uncle. Neil Simon is an American playwright. More than 30 plays. Grew up in the Great Depression. Let's see. What has he done? Fills a bunch of shows. No, I didn't know that. So this dude, I don't even know who this dude is, but obviously he's accomplished a lot of things. Look at all these TV shows. Yeah, a little before my time, but interesting. That's his dad. Okay, thank you for that. Mitt C. Dots, thank you for that. No, good, interesting. Uncle Bozy, undercover equals narcotics officer, for example. Plain clothes equals detectives usually. As far as I know, the FBI has no uniformed agents. From Uncle Bozy. Yeah, they just kind of make stuff up. They just change. No, there's definitely no FBI in clown suits there. Well, nobody said that they were in clown suits. Yeah, but they're not there. Okay. How about the other ones? Well, we didn't look into those. And they're FBI adjacent. Are they CHSs? And then they do the sneaky thing where they're like, well, they're not CHSs. They were just prospective sources. Okay. And then they splice and dice, that way. Bucky's is Rome. Says CIA admits to spying on Senate staffers. CIA is another whole gigantic problem. John Brennan came out of it. Admitted to improperly access computers used by the Senate Intelligence Committee. Sick. Uncle Bozy. Both Comey and Brennan actually identified as communist in their college days. Yeah, communism is rampant. It's everywhere. And they all just revise their labels. The greeners, the green save the planet people, they're communists. And they just pervert it, whatever it is. The trans people, diversity, whatever, they're communists. That's all it is. I actually got through to Rush Limbaugh several years ago and asked him how they were ever hired by the federal government in the first place. Rush said he didn't know. True story. That's an awesome story, man. You got to talk to Rush? I never did. That's awesome, dude. Talk to a legend. Very cool. Uncle Bozy. Very cool. And yeah, the communists were everywhere. I mean, if there's literature on this. They were everywhere. They were embedded everywhere. They were openly and kind of nakedly communist. In fact, there's a great book called The Naked Communist that walks you through it. W. Cleon Skousen, the coolest name ever. Rush said he didn't know, but they're everywhere, man. And they have been just embedding themselves in academia, in science, recreating all these institutions in their own image because their ultimate goal is to seize control. And it's a fascinating ideology. I can understand why people would get bought into it. I completely, disagree with it. I think it's a cancerous, disgusting, kind of a sick ideology. But for people who are looking for answers, it's very attractive. And so we cannot minimize what it is, because they're on a resurgence right now. Buc-ee's they're going to win in New York. Like, they're resurging in America. We're going through a new communist Red Scare, except they're not actually going to call themselves communists, because they know that word has lost them cover. So they'll call themselves a bunch of different things, like Democratic Socialist is going to be the new one. While John Brennan voted for the Communist Party in 1976, he said it was a protest. He was never a registered member of the Communist Party. Okay, he voted for them. He stated that his vote was to express unhappiness, and he was accepted into the CIA despite this admission. Yeah, we're sure. Definitely not a communist, I'm sure. Jerome, I think President Trump deserves a do-over. Yeah, at least for the first 2 years. Get those back that they stole from him. Jerome, thank you for the dono, my man. Appreciate you being here. Happy Monday. Real with Robo. We are still with you. Real with Robo. 19 months as a membo. Thank you for being here for so long. That's over 2 babies. Says, keep kicking butt. Mama Robo and the Robo fam. Good to have you guys. Robo. I wonder what that stands for. Good to have you. Mama Robo in the house. Trisha says, is it a conflict of interest to represent your previous boss-in-law? I don't think so. He's a private practitioner. We've also got Comey, who's not in government office. And they probably didn't sleep together. You know, there's rules about like representing somebody you slept with. In California, they don't care. Like, sleep with your clients, that's no problem. Other states have a problem with that. So unless James Comey slept with Patrick Fitzgerald, his attorney, which I've seen no evidence for, it's probably not a conflict. But you should check your local ethics rules in your state if they did. Hey, Trisha, what's up? Don't. Joe D. Genova. Comey's indictment is premature in that it could provide him double jeopardy protection for more serious charges down the road. This is dicey. Well, the statute of limitations is going to expire tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. So if the indictment is going to be refreshed or there's going to be a superseding indictment, I think that should be filed like today. Probably not going to see anything more. Although, if there's a RICO or a conspiracy, James Comey could absolutely belong to that. Thank you for the comment, Doan. FD man, what's up? James Comey and all others like him, the Joker from The Dark Knight describes them. He'll find him and make him squeal. I know the squealers when I see him. Is that before he smashed that dude's head into the pencil? Which was pretty epic move. I was like, damn, savage. Natalie Ray says, hey, Rob, bought a new book this weekend. Have you read it? Just showing the whole fam our support. From Evolving You, from my beautiful fiance and bride-to-be, Alexis Gouveia. What a very nice comment, Natalie Ray. I encourage everybody to pick up a book over on Amazon at Evolving You. 4 focuses to create the life of your dreams, courtesy of my beautiful fiance, Alexis Gouveia. It's an amazing book, Natalie Ray. Glad that you're digging into it. And thank you for sharing it here. Buc-ee's is Rome. What's going on? From Mike Davis, sharing a couple of comments from Mike Davis. Miami U.S. Attorney Jason is impaneling a new grand jury in Florida. Wonder what that's going to be about. Thank you for that from Mike Davis. FD man, what's up? Only one religion that is very 7th century world society trying to be exactly like the prophet in every way. From marrying family members, converting people by the sword, to how they treat females. From FD Man. Thank you, FD Man, for the dono. Sassy Gemini. Okay, one last plug for the doc I prepared today about Mormon versus Church of LDS. Here's the link to the document. It's free to share if you want. Well, that's amazing. Thank you for preparing that for us, Sassy Gemini. We were asking, is it illegal to say Mormon? I said Mormon this morning. Was it not illegal? And so we were having a conversation. Is it LDS or is it Mormon? What can you do? How do you say it? And I think it's okay to say both. Just depends who you're referencing and how. Philip Butler. No, he means nullifying federal laws. Philip says the DOJ should take sanctuary laws to SCOTUS. From Philip B. Doan is here. Neil Simon won a Pulitzer for All in the Family. Is that right? And that's the judge's dead. Okay, Rick D sent this one. It's a rock. He sent this out of an airplane. It says, turn me over. You just took orders from a rock. Are you a liberal? Oh, gosh. I'd throw that rock into the bottom of a river. See how it likes it. Hey, what's up? Wow, amazing. They're out of stock over there. Hats off to Alexis. First time I went to buy one, I got this message, but I was able to buy one today. Amazing. Well, my friends, thank you for supporting her and her work. It's an amazing book, and she put a lot of time into it, and it's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Really, really awesome to see that. And that's her Instagram, if you want to follow her. She wrote an amazing book, Evolving You. Jigam Natalie, thanks for plugging my beautiful fiance's book. She's amazing. And for saying all of that. And my friends, thank you for those donos and those comments. Let's say what's up to our friends on X to see who is joining us over there. And if we got any comments, and I think we do. Fred Petamonte says, I think when all's said and done, there's going to be something like 400 government paid people at J6. Agents, CHAS, no government assets, and more. From Fred Petamonte. Neuro D Mini Tika. Thank you for sending in our Rumble links, and thanks to our Rumble friends for watching there. Satellite Boy. If they're assaulting federal agents and attacking federal buildings while chanting, quote, no borders, no walls, no USA at all, are they saying that? I think it's fair to call it a rebellion against the government. Yeah, and they're waving their foreign flags around, and the Democrats are not disavowing them. So it's inappropriate. Biff Gruffly. Well, that is a shame, says Biff. The party of lawfare gets a taste of its own medicine. Hey, what's going on? Rosie Posey. FYI, Patrick Fitzgerald was the DA who prosecuted Governor Blagojevich. Got that one. Peter Safety says, Chuck says 6 ways from Sunday over there. Yeah, Chuck Schumer. The intelligence agencies can get you 6 ways from Sundays. Dr. Steele. I like your content, but you hardly ever show up in my feed. What's going on, Twitter? Alvy Baby. What's up, Alvy Baby? Comey posted 8647. There should have been 25 federal agents arresting him. Yeah, and at least 29. At least 29 of them, like Roger Stone got. Remember that? Hey, what's up? Wally's George's Army was sharing this link of Wray Epps into the Capitol. You remember that one, of course. That came in over on X. And my friends, thank you for sending those in and for supporting our work here. But we will pause here for the evening, my friends. Apollo Cabrera. Thank you, Apollo. Love the stream. Thank you for the relentless pursuit. Apollo, thank you for saying that, man. Thank you for being here and supporting us as we're doing it. We have a country to save, and we're glad to be doing it together with you. So thanks for being here. And I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths and everybody helping out around here. Big shout outs to Donut Mind Me, to John in the house. We got K Bean, Carrie B clipping for us, Neuro D, Dog Digger, and Janek. Big shout outs to Gigam Gigam, Elliot, and Just Rhonda, our purveyor of fine emojis. It has been a lovely stream, my friends. But we'll pause here for the evening. Members, stick around. We're going to have an after party, so we'll debrief, take some additional locals comments, see what you have to say about all of this and more. And if you'd like to come join us, then we'll see you on locals, on YouTube, or on Substack, which is where we're streaming right now. So come on over and join us, my friends. It has been a beautiful stream, a beautiful Monday. We've got a bunch of business to attend to. Michelle squeezing this one in at the last minute. Thank you, Michelle. The U.S. military is the closest thing to communism in America. Provides housing, pay by seniority, free health insurance, retirement benefits, and people complain how much the DoD budget is. That budget is the cost of communism. Maybe, but I think the military is kind of like, I'd say different than communism because there's like definitive classes. You have to earn your way up, and you have, like years of service to escalate up. You start as a private and work your way up the ranks. So it's not a classless society. And I think you have to earn your promotions and earn your keep. And so So I guess in terms of resources, you know, they take a lot from the federal budget, but as a society, it's like they're, you know, is it Karl Marx's from each according to his ability to each according to his needs? Like if you go in the military, I've never been in the military, but if you are in the military, can you just take whatever you want and like not give anything if you don't want to do, like not do anything? Like let's say you're like a midshipman on a Navy boat. You're like, you know, today I really don't feel like, you know, washing the boat. You know, you're thrown out of the military, right? It's like, it's not like a classless society. So I understand your point about kind of maybe the economics of it, because as you know, as a military, it's like they're not producing, like when they're sailing around on an aircraft carrier, they're like not necessarily producing a good or service, although maybe they are. Maybe by providing, you know, global security so that the oil can be shipped appropriately without being exploded or taken over by pirates, maybe that is worth the cost and the expenditure. So, yeah, so I don't know exactly. I understand the idea that it's service, you know, you're kind of operating out of service in many ways. But communism, I think, doesn't understand incentives or the incentive structure. And I think the military is like extremely incentive structure based. Yeah, grocery stores on base, school is on base. So just because something is communal, right? Just because people live in a community doesn't mean that it is communism. Like you still pay for things, right? And you still transact things. Like who owns the means of production on a military base? Would you say the military does? Like they own it themselves? That might be the closest analogy to it. But the military wouldn't exist without support of the taxpayer base, right? And I personally would like an F-35. That's one of my needs. So from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, I need an F-35. You know what I'm saying? So I'd like to get that from the military. Can I get that? Probably not. So it's an interesting analogy, something interesting to compare it to. The military also, you know, doesn't send people to gulags, although they kind of do. So that's another point. Well, anyways, thank you for the comment and the conversation on that, Michelle. Thank you for the nice dono. Summerman, what's up? Pie in the house. Pie. That's a great, delicious thing indeed. Thank you, Summerman. I hope you have some tonight. Steph D, what's up? Bringing in Rick Katz. Terry is coming in. Jackie Kennedy is here. Christina McBride and Nalij. All in the house, courtesy of Steph D, bringing in new membos. Yeah, military who will go to war to defend the nation to possibly be killed on the battlefield all said, send me, while others say no. Yeah, and like if you're in the military and you don't feel like going and dying in battle, do you just say, actually, no, this is not according to my needs. I don't need to go to battle, and I would like to just sit in the mess hall and eat food all day. It doesn't feel exactly like, you know, you could have a communistic military for sure, but I don't know that our military, I would say, is communistic. There are communal features to it, but it's just like anything, you know, if you go on a team sport or something, like there's a lot of community there. A lot of people are doing things if you're in a fraternity or something, right? Or, you know, big household, like people will do things for the household. You'll share goods and resources, but it's not, you know, communistic per se. It's like everybody has a strong incentive to perform. And if they don't have that incentive, then they're going to be thrown right out. Like you get booted out of the military. You're not performing. You're failing, you know, you're gone. FD man, not everyone can be a soldier. No doubt about it, man. And we shout out to our soldiers, but it's a great conversation. And this is the thing about communism. You know, it can be amorphous. And in many ways, you know, like we have a lot of disdain for the government here, right? We're constantly questioning the government, skeptical about the government. Libertarians, you know, might be questioning the government. And then you kind of look at communism over here and they're like, well, we want to get rid of the government too. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, how come? Well, the government is oppressing you. It's like, oh, I agree with that. You know, in many ways, the government is, you know, creating a power structure that can be oppressive. It's like, okay, yeah, like a lot of that is true. What is their solution, though? That's the problem. Like, so you can relate to a lot of the problems with the communists, but their solution is generally you take the incentives out, you take morality out, you take ethics out, and you just have this, materialism that can be organized through the goodwill and the good nature of people. And in practice, it's resulted in hundreds of millions dead. So it's not ideal. Anyways, my friends, thanks for the conversation about communism. There's going to be a lot more of it in America. And Apollo, thank you for that one. Love the stream. Thank you for the relentless pursuit. And we appreciate you. Thank you for the relentless pursuit. We're going to keep it on. So, my friends, all right, we're going to pause what's happening here for the evening. We're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com and for our YouTube membos for our after party. We're going to hang out for a bit. We'd love to have you come join us. Members will be back tomorrow morning again to get into it again for our members only stream. And my friends, we'll be back tomorrow afternoon for the regular stream. And we hope that you are back. That's why we would love it if you subscribed, if you haven't already done so, and like this video and all the things, because we're coming back tomorrow and we're going to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers shine in the light. Watching the watchers defending what's right. Watching the watchers stay each night together and live it.